All right, so we talked about art. Now we're going to talk about texts. There are a lot of texts in human history that refer to aliens, gods, other sort of creatures. And obviously, like there's it's like a historical game of telephone. There's all kinds of interpretations, translations, all that kind of stuff. I'm aware of it all. But there's certain things that, you know, are consistent across different cultures or are extremely detailed. So I'm just going to go into a couple of them. So the Sumerian texts and the Anunnaki cuneiform, this is absolutely pretty much the hands down best example of alien interactions being recorded by human beings. So it's a coherent narrative. These Anunnaki came to Earth. These are described as gods, right? These beings that came, they established like operations, created humans through genetic modification of existing creatures. So took the existing hominids and altered our DNA to turn us into something else. They governed human civilization directly for a long period and then eventually withdrew their involvement. The Sumerian king list describes rulers who reigned for tens of thousands of years. That's the other thing with these Anunnaki. They had extremely long lives. There's some sort of giant flood, and then the lifespans go back to human scale after that flood. The text explicitly splits that history into the two eras. Before with the Anunnaki, with the whole long lives, you know, this structural setup of civilization. And then the after, right? In the before, in the tens of thousands of years, this is like they're transmitting information like mathematics and that kind of thing that we're going to need to become our modern society. Interesting thing is, it's like they use base 60, not base 10, which is how we still measure time. And this is like totally my own theory. I did not read this anywhere. Everything that I generally talk about is documented science, evidence, you know, historical texts, all that kind of stuff. This is just my own little sidebar. If these beings are illustrated with 3 fingers, then in total they have 6. So creating a base 60 system would make sense for a being. Like this is why human beings have base 10. We have 5 fingers on each hand. That's 10. This is how people learn to count. They use their digits. So anyway, back to the tablets. These are the oldest written tablets on the earth. And they do not call them myths. Like they don't refer to, like, they're listed as and spoken about as though they're literal, physically present rulers. Some of these specific elements worth noting here. The creation narrative describes Enki and the birth goddess taking the essence of a god and combining it with clay. You know, this has always been interpreted as mythological language for divine creation. But it's structurally identical to a genetic modification narrative. The being whose essence was used is described as being killed for the purpose. The resulting humans are described as unable to reproduce initially, then modified to allow reproduction. The Anunnaki debate among themselves whether to tell humans about an approaching flood. The question of whether to warn or not to warn is a management decision, not a divine one. And then there's some other translations. There's this other person, specifically Zachariah Sitchin. Their translations are that they're beings from elsewhere. They're arriving on Earth. They're modifying existing creatures, governing directly, then withdrawing. So that's in the text regardless of the translation. The mainstream narrative is that these are mythological personifications of natural forces. But, you know, it might not be. It might be a literal record of events at the time. So yeah, that's the first one. There's several others, but I had a lot of info on the Anunnaki one, so I made it its own little video. Next one, I'll go through a whole bunch of other, again, historical texts that seem to or could imply some sort of interaction with alien life.